Hey, what's going on, guys? Coming at you with a $30 budget of 3 times Wave of Light structure deck profile, and today I'll be showing you guys counter fairies, because that's what the deck's called, even though the structure deck is called Wave of Light. So a few things you're going to see in this deck profile. Number one, you're going to see how counter fairies and Dragon Shield White Sleeves are a match made in heaven, pun intended. Like, seriously, the deck looks gorgeous in white sleeves like this. Number two, you'll see kind of, on paper at least, the power of this structure deck, and actually, how good it is just right out of the box, and how, at least in theory and on paper, if this deck can go first against just about any deck, it still has a good chance of winning. And that's even considering the fact that you're missing cards like Card Demise, you're missing like Pod Duality from here. There's no reprint of like Solemn Strike or Storming Mirror Force or anything. So I mean, there's still some cards that are missing here and there, but the main core is really there, and it's still a really strong functioning deck as it is. And it's just showing, what I think is the best deck profile that you can get out of, the free structure deck boxes you can get. All the cards that are within the structure deck. So without any further ado, we'll kind of get right into it. So starting off with the monsters, you of course have the triple Bountiful Artemis. No matter what build of counter fairies you're playing, you absolutely need to run 3 of this. The fact that it draws you a card each time a counter trap resolves, whether it's yours or your opponent, it's just too good to ignore. Nets you so much advantage, and if you can maintain this card on the board for a couple turns, you're almost always winning the game, especially going first. So Artemis, staple 3 of. Never staple 3 of is the free Guide Ariadne. This makes it to where your counter traps you can activate without paying any kind of discard or life point cost, which is really, really good. For cards like Solemn Warning, Ultimate Providence, and the new Parshaft counter trap that you get in the structure deck. So yeah, really, really good. Next, we have 3 of one of the new counter fairies, Minerva, Scholar of the Sky. This card says, each time a counter trap card is activated, immediately after the effect resolves, gain 500 attack points. That effect does stack, and it is a continuous effect. So this card can get really big really quick if you end up using a lot of counter traps while this card's on the field. Also, if Sanctuary in the Sky... Oh, give me a second here. Sorry about that. And then if Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field, you can also add 1 counter trap with a different name from your graveyard to your hand. So this is a really good card overall. As I said, it can be a really big beater if you build up enough counter traps while this card's on the field. And it also lets you recycle back your counter traps, which was actually a weakness of the deck before this new support. You'd get to a point where you just eventually run out of counter traps, and you really couldn't draw into more counter traps off of like Artemis, for example. So that would kind of leave you in a bad spot. But with a card like Minerva, being able to recycle back your good counter traps once you build up a decent amount of them in grave is just really, really good. So free Minerva in this build. You could potentially play 2 in the more competitive builds, but free's pretty good in this. Next, we have 2. Trying to think of how to pronounce his name. Meltiel, Sage of the Sky. We'll say that's right. Basically, each time a counter trap card resolves, you gain 1,000 life points, and if Sanctuary in the Sky is on the board, you get to destroy 1 card. Pretty solid card, especially in the mid to late games, similar to Minerva. Just being able to net advantage off of your counter traps resolving, and also being able to pop cards too can mean you can actually pick apart your opponent's boards if you have enough counter traps to go off of with this card on the board. So yeah, really, really good card. Card you could potentially play at 1 in, again, the more competitive builds, but I think 2 is pretty good here. And then we do play another one of the new counter fairies, the 1 Power Angel Valkyria. If you negate the activation of a spell, trap card, or monster effect, you can add 1 light fairy monster from your deck to your hand, and you can only use this effect once per turn. So this is pretty decent one that I might still consider playing in the more competitive variants with like Card Demise and stuff like that. But not nearly as good as like Minerva or even Meltiel in my opinion, because you really don't want to search light fairy monsters a lot of the times. The biggest thing you want to get to your hand is just more counter traps. But this is nice for being a way to tutor out your Artemis if you don't already have it, tutoring out your Guide Ariadne if you don't already have it. So pretty decent one in my opinion. Speaking of other light fairies you can search off of it, we do have the 2 Honest. You can play free if you want. I do side the 3rd for my little makeshift side deck for this budget deck profile. But Honest is pretty decent in here. Everything's a light fairy. So you can potentially protect one of your counter fairies on the board, like Bountiful Artemis. You can potentially use them to beat over bigger things as well. But even this build, it doesn't play card demise, doesn't really have a lot of monsters, so that's where I felt 2 was the right number, and it can be kind of a brick, especially going first. So yeah, I think 2 is the right number. Although in like card demise variants, you probably don't play this at all because it just conflicts way too much with card demise. And you do now have a card in the Minerva that doesn't really need Honest that much for how big it can get really quickly. Then for the final monster, Counter Fairies finally have a boss monster, because that's what they needed. This is Sacred Arc, Arknight Parshath. Kind of a weird looking card for the fact that it's got a really big head that it's like floating on. I don't know if it's supposed to be like its crotch or something, but it's the same exact head as or in the face. It's the same exact face and head as the actual face and head that it has up there. Really weird. So this is 2800 attack, 2500 defense. It's level 9, it looks like. If you activate a counter trap card, or if you negate the activation of a spell, trap card, or monster effect, except during damage step, you can banish 2 other fairy monsters from your hand, field, and or graveyard. Special summon this card from the graveyard or your hand. Yeah, so you can special summon from your graveyard or your hand by banishing 2 fairies whenever you negate something, basically. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing damage, and then when this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can add 1 Parshath card or 1 counter trap card from your deck to your hand. So a pretty nice 1-of to combo off with a counter trap that can summon this straight from your deck. You don't really want to play more than 1 because you can even recur this from the graveyard if you want to, and this is a card you do not want to draw. It's a complete brick. Drawing this, similar to like Gem Knight Garnet, but it's a really good card if it goes off. Can really help you get a lot of damage on board pretty quickly for a deck that's not really known to do that, and even could potentially get you to OTKs as well. So yeah, it's a nice 1-of to have, but no more than that in any build you're playing, unless you're playing like a devoted Parshath build, really. So that's it for the monsters. Now for the spells. For one of the real godsends to this deck is the free Sanctum of Parshath. So this card is treated as Sanctuary in the Sky on the field and in the graveyard. And basically, it protects your sets, spell and trap cards from being targeted or destroyed by card effects. That means no Twin Twisters, no Cosmic Cyclones, no MSTs, no Tornado Dragons, Castel, anything like that. And it also gives all your fairies a 300 attack boost as well. So, boost your Gaia Ariadne to 2000, boost your Artemis to 1900. Actually makes some pretty beefy beaters. And then once per turn, you can target 3 fairies and or counter trap cards in your graveyard, and then place them back on top of the deck in any order. So similar to the what was the other new one I was talking about? Where is it at? The Valkyrie girl, the Power Angel Valkyria. Similar to that, it's just another card that can potentially recycle back your engine, some of your fairy monsters and your counter traps to be able to reuse again. So overall, Sanctum of Parshath, really good card. It is important that it counts as Sanctuary in the Sky because there are cards that, work with Sanctuary in the Sky on the board. And, again, the boost and the protection is just really, really good. A card you could potentially play 2 of in the competitive builds because unfortunately it's not searchable. If it counted as Sanctuary in the Sky in the deck, then it would be searchable. But yeah, so in this build, free because you want to be able to protect your stuff. Next, we had the 2 original Sanctuary in the Skies. It's really unfortunate that the structure deck did not come with the monster that actually searches out Sanctuary in the Sky, but you kind of make do with what you have. Its only effect is that anytime that your fairies are involved in the battle, you take no damage from it, and it is a field spell, which can be kind of nice with like card demise, getting a card out of your hand. But it just meets the requirement of being Sanctuary in the Sky for other cards on the board. So yeah, that's why we played it too. Then for the final spell, Free Ties of the Brethren. Don't think I need to explain this too much. You just have so many level 4 light fairies. Your biggest play you want to do with Ties of the Brethren is you want to be able to tutor out your Bountiful Artemis, your Honest, and probably your Minerva, and just be able to set up everything that you want on board, especially turn 1. Unfortunately, this is a big Ash target, but if you can get this off, you're probably winning the game, especially going first. So for traps, we have the free of the new Parshath counter trap card, the free Rebirth of Parshath. So when a spell, trap card, or monster effect is activated, reveal one counter trap in your hand. Do keep in mind that part of it is an activation requirement, not a cost. So even if you have Ariadne on board, you still have to reveal the counter trap. And the cost is to discard one card and pay 1,000 life points. And you can negate the activation, and if you do, shuffle that card into your deck, or into the deck. Then you can special summon one Parshath monster from your deck or extra deck. So really good card overall. It's almost free if you have Ariadne on board, other than having to have a counter trap in your hand. The fact that it negates the card and shuffles it back to the deck is huge as well, because it gets rid of a potential graveyard resource there. And as I said, being able to summon the new boss monster for free with this, or even summon the Synchro Parshath, the Avenging Knight Parshath for free is really, really good. So in this build, you play 3. In some other competitive builds, you can potentially play 2 or 1, because it does take a little bit of setup to work, but yeah, it's just a really strong card. Next, we have the free Divine Punishment, basically a Solemn Judgment if you have Sanctuary in the Sky on the board. If your opponent activates a spell, trap, or monster effect, and you have Sanctuary in the Sky on the board, negate it and destroy it. Next, an obvious staple in my opinion for any Counter Fairy deck, the free Drastic Drop-Off. I do see some builds floating around that actually do not play this card at all, and I think that is incorrect. Basically, this card is an instant Upstart Goblin whenever you have Artemis on board. It's an instant 500 boost to your Minerva, and it's an instant way to recover back one of your counter traps if you have Minerva on board. This just is a big Kickstarter for one of your key counter fairies on board. And also being able to snipe away some of your opponent's searches as well, or draws off of, say, like Desires or something like that, is really, really good as well. So drop off, I think is a staple for Rev. You do have to be careful how you use it sometimes against some obscure decks like Burning Abyss that benefit from the graveyard, but other than that, it's just a really solid card. Next, we have the free Ultimate Providence. Again, another Solemn Judgment, but you do have to discard the same type of card that you're negating. So if you're negating a trap card, you have to discard a trap card from your hand, a monster, discard a monster, etc. But with Guide and Ariadne on board, you do not have to pay that cost, so it becomes a free Solemn Judgment. So yeah, really, really good card, especially with Ariadne. Next, we have the 2 Dark Bribe and 2 Recall. We unfortunately did not get Solemn Strike in this deck, so Recall is just basically the budgeted version of that. And Dark Bribe is the other counter trap we got. We probably would have been better off getting like Curse Seal the Forbidden Spell, but we got Dark Bribe. So yeah, just basically playing these to up our amount of counter traps, because we need counter traps for our deck to work. That's why it's called Counter Fairies. And then for the final counter trap, we have the 1 Solemn Warning. Very nice common reprint for the structure deck. So that is the entire main deck, 40 cards. For the makeshift side deck, kind of an interesting inclusion for this structure deck. We have the free Hainwada. Does happen to be a light fairy, and it is really nice if you're going against Trickstars at your locals. You don't want to take that burn damage. You don't want to get FTK'd or anything. So yeah, Hainwada can be good for that. 2 Jalenduo, basically here because it can't be destroyed by battle. Can occasionally be a 2 tribute cost for your Parshath if you dead draw it. Other than that, it's just, a staller against really bad decks. That's pretty much all there is to it. Next, they actually gave us all 3 of the little Herald Fairy monsters, so like hand trap ones. So we have the 2 Herald of Orange Light, which negates monsters, 2 Herald of the Green Light, which negates spells, and 2 of Herald of the Purple Light, which negates trap cards. Would not play this at all in the competitive build, but it's kind of neat to have in the structure deck based build, because you can potentially side this in against a trap heavy matchup, a spell heavy matchup, or a monster heavy matchup, and have some kind of budget hand traps that you can use to negate your opponent's stuff. So that's not too bad. Next we have the third Honest. Basically, you side in if you're going second, you want to beat over big stuff. The third Sanctuary in the Sky, in case you think you're not getting Sanctuary in the Sky quick enough with the 5 copies you have in the main deck, or you're going against an OTK deck and you really want to see this card so they don't OTK you. That's a thing too. And then for the final side cards, the 3rd Dark Bribe and 3rd Recall, because we don't really have anything better to the side with the restrictions we have here. So that is it for this $30 budget Counter Fairy structure deck using only cards from the Wave of the Light structure deck. I do hope you guys enjoyed it. Sorry this one ran a lot longer than I was anticipating, but you know, had a lot of stuff to explain, and I was really excited to finally give you guys a Counter Fairy update for the first time in a while. And don't worry, I will be providing some other deck profiles of some of the different builds, especially the competitive version, that's running both Demise and Ties of Brethren. Hopefully when I get Card Demise here soon. Really looking forward to that. Really excited about the deck, and I think it can actually do some decent things in the meta, especially if we can win some die rolls. So that is it, guys. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time.